Hello, people of the internet. My name is Jordan. The PH is silent, and welcome to the Saturday morning D&D show. I am joined, as always, by my wonderful co-host, Sir Lucian Gaming. Hello, Mr. Lucian.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back.
Wonderful Saturday morning.
Thank you for joining us on our wonderful Saturday morning. I should probably open up the chat so I can see what's going on there. But yeah, so we had like a big episode last week. And it was awesome, and we had Mr. Matt Colville here, and now I'm just like, what are we going to talk about this week? It's really difficult to like top ourselves. So
how do we follow that up?
Kind of like a more casual episode, I think, of Saturday morning D&D show. We'll kind of talk about the games we've been playing throughout the week. I started a new game on Saver Dice, called a Numenera game called Fury. And I know Sir Lucian's been busy this week, so let's just dive right into it. What have you been doing with games this week, Mr. Lucian?
Yeah, so in between moving buckets of water out of my basement, as I was one of those people that got flooded, so that's been a little bit of what's going on. But I was able to manage to still get in Storm King's Thunder on Monday night, which was really good. Our team is beginning to move northward, and they are chasing kind of a side quest called the Weevil, which is this evil little dwarf that they want to bring in for a bounty. And something super funny happened in that. To me, when I prepped that little side quest, it was, hey, go find, it's a wanted poster. Go find this guy. You get 5,000 gold pieces if you bring him to the constable type thing, right? Mm-hmm. So all they got to do is go to the small place, find this dwarf, capture him, take him off. And I thought, okay, so we'll see how that goes. I never in a million years thought that they were going to try to break into a keep, get caught, try to lie their way out. Half of them are inside the keep jail. Half of them are on the outside running. It went completely off the rails when they came up with this crazy plan to try to sneak into the keep for no reason. The guy they're looking for wasn't in the keep. He was somewhere else. They hadn't even done an investigation to find where he was at. So it was super funny. I'm going to have to deal with that common trope, I think, that a lot of us DMs deal with is what happens when your characters are in jail, right? Because some people start their campaign off with your characters are in jail, or sometimes they'll do it just as an adventure. You get put in jail, and now you got to find your way out. So it happens in a lot of campaigns. It's the first time it's happening in my campaign, so I'm going to have to see how they handle. Half of their group is imprisoned at the moment, and the other half is outside trying to figure out what to do, and they can't communicate with each other. So it's going to be very interesting the next couple Monday sessions to see what they do with this. And I have no idea, because I had no idea they would try to break into the keep that has 150 soldiers in it and get caught. It was just the funniest thing. So that was really good.
What percentage of the way through Storm King's Thunder do you think you are?
We are currently, they're broken up into chapters, and we are now moving into the halfway point for sure.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And we're just about past the open world portion, and it's about to really start following the quest line almost on a rail a little bit. Mm-hmm. They're at the end of that portion. So during chapters 3 and 4 is this open world portion of Storm King's Thunder. And this isn't really giving it away for anybody that still wants to play, because if you're not the GM, you don't know what I mean by where the chapters are. But 3 and 4 are kind of the open world portion of it. And then after that, depending on which way you go into either 6, 7, 8, or 9. But you don't have to do all of them. You just pick one of them. You go down that route, and then that brings you to some of the final scenes and stuff.
Okay.
So they're on that portion of which one are they going to choose, 6, 7, 8, or 9. And then the storyline will go off of that. So
what's the level range? Like when
they
you
say
start at 1, obviously, but...
Yeah. They say 1 to 12 plus.
Really? Okay.
Yep. My characters are at 7.
Wow. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah. So we went from 1 to 7. It's also, if you're interested in running it as a GM, it actually is a 5 to 12 module, but they give you a good first section that you can say, if you want to run it from first level, you can, and here's all the stuff that you can do to do that. But it is meant to kind of be a 5th to 12th because you're fighting giants, right? I mean, you're fighting dudes that are strength 24, plus 9 to hit. Damage is through the roof, 31, 41 points on average of damage from a rock, so your characters have to be pretty tough to go through a Storm King's Thunder adventure. But it's been good, and it's been fun so far. So
that's really cool.
Yeah. Tomb Annihilation is on hiatus. That's my Tuesday night game. Unfortunately, PB, my great friend who plays in a lot of our games, you know PB quite a bit, and she's in my Standard Array show as my co-host. Her laptop died. And normally, that happens to a lot of people, but she's also just now getting recovered from when the big storm, the hurricane, hit Houston. And so all their money has gone into fixing their house that had 4 feet of water in it. So now all of a sudden her laptop has died. And so now she's working to get that up and running. But we're trying to help her out, and we're going to try to get her back up and in the shows. So Tomb Annihilation's on hiatus until she's back, because we only have 3 players for that, so we don't want to move forward without her. She's like the heart and soul of our team anyways. Borderlands Thursday, this is the week off. Our players play 3 weeks, and we skip a week just because of scheduling. So that's like a 3-week game. That'll start up again this coming up week. And then Standard Array, I did the session solo, and I recorded a session about how to run a game if you're going to be running it at a convention. Some things to think about and some things to do. Because I've been doing that in the last couple years, and I thought it might be something that people would be interested in watching.
Yeah, no, and I caught that, and there was a lot of great information in there, because I never even thought about like running a game at a con, or even like running something like Adventures League where you don't know the people and it's kind of you just sit down and try to go. It's a little different than hanging out with your friends. So
yeah, and there's a good question in chat. Did our group meet Harshnag? Yeah, they did meet Harshnag. They followed. They've gone to the Eye of the Allfather. I'll just say that without spoiling too much. They're done with that portion, and now they are adventuring without Harshnag, as he has stayed behind at this point. And then Storm King's Thunder has been one of my favorite published 5e books for me so far too, although I'm hearing lots of good things about Tomb of Annihilation, and I'm playing it, but I think I want to run it at some point because it sounds like it's super fun for players also. So it might give it a run for its money. But Storm King is really good, so I agree with the chat on that.
It's so funny because I've been building like my homebrew game and stuff, and we've been having a lot of fun with it. But then I get these modules and I read them. And when we were at like a crossroads, my players were saying, well, we should play Curse of Strahd. And I was like semi-interested in Curse of Strahd. I was really interested in Storm King's Thunder, but I was a hard sell for them. They were kind of like, giants, we don't really care. And I'm like, no, it's really good. But now that you guys were just telling me, I didn't realize, and I feel bad because I've read Storm King's Thunder, but obviously I didn't read it close enough. But I didn't realize you could start at like level 5, because that might be, if they don't have to be level 1 characters again, they might be really interested in playing through it. And that could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a good module. I really like it. It's especially for a Forgotten Realms. Like I remember you saying you bought the book because it had a lot of good Forgotten Realms information in it, and it does. It
for my videos,
250 locations kind of mapped out with 2 or 3 paragraphs of information plus encounters that you could do there in a great map. I mean, I love it, and it's on Roll20, so I have all the maps. I have all the tokens for all the creatures that are in it. It's just really good. So, and then the last thing, this is the first show of the month. So on that, if I get any subscribers during today's broadcast, I'm going to be contacting them, and I'm going to offer them a spot in a one-shot that I'm going to DM in a D&D 5e game. One-shot that will be filled with either subscribers or even subscribers and some of the players from the games that I'm in now. So if you want to win your chance into that, go ahead and hit that subscribe button in the and Twitch there. So how about you, Jordan? What was your week like?
It was good. So I was contacted a couple of months ago to do a game. Cody over from Taking 20, he runs Saver Dice, which is on YouTube. They're on Twitch as well, but I think they stopped broadcasting on Twitch because they were getting better numbers on YouTube, which is fine. It's wherever you go where your audience is, I guess. But they run a 5th edition game on Wednesdays, and they wanted to add more games. So I'm part of a Numenera game on Mondays. And we had our very first session last Monday, and I was super nervous because like I don't know the system of Numenera very well. Like I read it, but I really wanted to like play a couple games to get it under my feet before we went live with an audience, and I'm just like panicking, like, ugh. Luckily I was in the same boat because I think everybody there, only the game master had played Numenera before. And obviously he would have had to in order to run the game, and he really likes the system. But it was interesting. We all started on a boat, and we're kind of headed to this like mysterious island through this storm. So the majority of the game was we were on a boat doing to the 5th edition equivalent of skill checks. Like, it's kind of what it felt like repair this hole so that the ship doesn't sink, mend that sail, man overboard, try to help this guy get back on there. I asked if I could do some kind of like medicine check or might check to resuscitate somebody who had inhaled too much water. And I ended up putting my hand on his chest and like using a might roll. Which is the equivalent of a strength check. I like pushed all the water out of his chest and he got back up and started breathing, which was kind of fun. I had a lot of fun. It was an interesting game. It's just a odd system when you've played nothing but D&D for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it that the game. So in my D&D games, we have skill challenges where I set a DC of like, I don't know, 12 or 13. And then I say to my players, you need to get 8 successes before 3 failures. And that's how they win the encounter. And so they go through their skills and they say, okay, I want to do acrobatics. And I'm like, okay, story-wise, how are you using acrobatics in this skill challenge? It's like, well, I'm going to throw a rope across and I'm going to like tightrope walk across this rope to get to the other side of the ravine or something. And I'm like, okay, that's a great acrobatics check. And they either succeed or they fail based on that. And then the whole party succeeds or fails based on whether they get 8 or whether they get to 3 failures first. The entire game of Numenera feels like that. Because even combat you're just rolling a skill check for combat. Like, combat is exactly the same as mending a sail or fishing somebody from across the side of the boat. And I thought that was really interesting, mostly because Dungeons and Dragons has trained me to have that JRPG kind of feel where it's like, this is role-playing aspect and this is using our skills. And then the music changes and we go, da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na, and we start playing combat, because combat is very different from just role playing. And you kind of put those role play tools to the side and you engage in your combat side now. I'm really curious where this game is going to go moving forward. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. The big difference, I think, that I love Numenera a lot. When I decided to be a GM, we talked about this not too long ago where I was like, okay, a couple years ago I was trying to find a group, couldn't find one, and then made the decision after watching videos of like Matt Colville and Adam Coble and say, just be a DM, just be your own GM, and then you can play games. And I was like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I was looking at Dungeons and Dragons, and I'd come from 3.5, which was a pretty complicated system to learn. But then I also started seeing Numenera quite a bit. And what I liked about it was a system that was easy to teach new people. It was a narrative-driven system, and it had this one feature in it that really drew me, is that the GM doesn't roll dice. Mm-hmm. So in combat, what I liked about it was very interesting was that if I want my NPC to try to hit Jordan is going to try to move out of the way. So Jordan gets
like a
the roll.
defensive
It's always
roll.
on. Yeah. So, and what it did is it allows the GM to focus more on keeping the pacing and not slowing the game down to say, okay, Jordan, archer number 1 shoots an arrow at you. It got a 15. What's your AC? Okay, archer number 2 shoots at you, Jordan, but then swordsman number 4 goes after Johnny, and swordsman number whatever goes after this person. And I'm doing a bunch. It's like I'm playing so much, and you guys are just waiting for me to finish that piece. Whereas I didn't get that when I played Numenera. I had a group of bandits attack my party that I ran the game on, and it was just like, hey, this bandit comes running at you, waving his thing. He's going to hit you. Roll a defense, and they're like, okay. And then it's like, okay, this guy's going to come here. So you can really focus on it. But I do believe you're right in the idea that there's a lot more narrative checks to it as far as against your own skills, your 3 skills. And it is a different system, but it is still a difficulty because you're doing... There is a difficulty that's being set. You can take it down by using some of your points to
which is called effort.
Lower the
like
difficulty.
You have effort that you can you have a pool of points that you can put into rolls to try and make it easier to succeed. But you have to do that before you roll So you
Right.
can't like roll, miss, and then be like, oh, I applied 2 levels of effort to like succeed,
Yeah.
which is
and
kind
then
of
did they
interesting.
do a GM intrusion? Was the other really cool mechanic of the game? Did he do a GM intrusion? Yeah. So
No,
a GM
he didn't do
intrusion,
that.
oh,
He got a free GM intrusion because
Somebody
somebody rolled
rolled a
a
one.
nat 1. But what a GM intrusion basically is they get a special well, they get to intrude in the game. So like if you succeed, he could stop you and correct me if I'm wrong, Lucian, but like if you succeed, he could stop you and say, you don't actually succeed. I'm intruding on this for the sake of making the story go in the direction he wants it to go. But whenever he does that, he hands out experience points. So that's how you get experience. If that's how you level up and get experience is by the GM basically like screwing you over, so to speak.
Yeah, the way it's described in the book is that if things are going really well for the characters, like all your rolls are hitting, all of your plans are working just a little too well, you can offer in a GM intrusion to add in a complication.
Yeah.
Right? And so the idea is the player can accept it or reject it, which is really interesting. Now, if you accept it, you get the XP for yourself and you get to give 1 to somebody else in the group. So it's a mechanic way to say, do we want to do it? Because you want to level up, right? You want to get your character skills higher. You want to get to the next tiers, and you want to get your next ability. So you're always wondering, do I want to do it? Do I want to take that intrusion? Or no, this is too crucial of a moment. I don't want to do that. And then on a 1, that also can happen with a GM intrusion. So it's like it's adding a complication. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that you don't do something, but there's probably a consequence to what you did.
Okay.
Right? So maybe you got what you wanted, but now there's a bad thing about you got it, but here's what's wrong. Like, you were able to hit that guy, but now you made a ton of noise and you hear the boots of other soldiers coming. Like you've alerted somebody else. So you got what you wanted, but then there's a complication.
Or like I hooked up the electricity to the machine and got it running, but there's sparks flying, so now there's fires I have to put out or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Add a complication in. So it's a lot about let the players do what they're trying to do when they make those rolls, but also if it goes bad, give them a complication of what it is. And then sometimes it is like you just drop your weapon or you don't do it or something, but you kind of sparse that in. So it's a really interesting system. I find it really fun, and it is very different than Dungeons & Dragons too, I think, because the characters are very different. The character sheets look very different. Are you in the Numenera setting, or is he using a medieval setting but Numenera rules?
No, we're in a Numenera setting, so there's
so
like
that's even cool.
Yeah. So Numenera is like the ninth age or the ninth world.
Ninth world, yep.
And there's been like 8 other worlds before this, or 8 other like time periods of civilizations that have risen and fallen. So there's all this weird technology that they call Numenera. And that technology can appear like magic because it's so far advanced, but nobody really knows how it works anymore. So my character has a cybernetic arm that he got through touching some weird metal that like has assimilated itself onto his arm and given him extra strength because of it. But I have to like repair my arm with tools and things like that. So yeah, we're in the Numenera setting is really interesting because I read a little bit about the Cypher system, and what's the other game that he has that's in the Cypher system?
The Strange.
The Strange. That's the one that I thought was really interesting, where you could shift from present day to medieval times to like the future, I think.
Yep.
So that one was really interesting, but Numenera is its own encapsulated little thing, and it's interesting so far. I mean, we were on a Numenera ship sailing in the water that had basically these electrified sails that would push us along whether there was wind or not. And so it was this weird technology that would work, and nobody really knew how it worked or how to like repair it, except we had a nano. One of the characters you can play is a nano, and he knew enough about a Numenera to like repair our sails and stuff. So it was really, really interesting.
Yeah, it's
an elegant system. I'll say that. Like, I don't know if it's my favorite by any means, but it's an elegant system because of it's so easy to pick up. And I was so nervous, but about halfway through the game, I'm like, oh, I get it now. Like, I have these pool of points. I can apply effort. The DM tells me, hey, this is a challenge rating 5. I have to basically roll above a certain amount to get that number. It's cool. So, and I like the story. Unmade Gaming is the guy. His name's Michael, and he's our DM, and he loves Numenera, so he's really excited to continue along this path. And he's got a whole 8-week, 9-week story plan for us, so it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really like it. And the tie-in to D&D, this is the interesting thing. So some of you might be out there and say, hey, wait a minute, this is the Dungeons and Dragons show. Why are we talking about Numenera? Numenera is made by Monty Cook, and Monty Cook did a ton of design in 3.5 and 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. So this is the guy that was coming up with places like Ptolus, the setting for Ptolus, a lot of the Planescape kind of stuff, worked on a lot of these other things that were Dungeons and Dragons related. And so that same mind is bringing in, was built Numenera. The Strange was done by Bruce Cordell, another person that was, with TSR for a while, and then Wizards of the Coast. And then they've even got a few more that are coming out, like Predation is one about dinosaurs and technology, and there's one about the Gods Fall, which is about gods that have been brought down from the heavens are now walking among Earth, and they're trying to find their way back up. So there's like a lot of these and Cypher is how to run the system no matter what genre. You want to play superhero, you want to play medieval, you want to play historic, you want to play Wild West, whatever it is, here's the rules to play that. So it's a really cool system. I think it's super fun, and I'm going to have more of it on my channel too, because I really like it a lot.
And then I completely forgot, I played immediately following the Saturday morning D&D show last week, I played a Dungeon Crawl Classics game with our friend Lex, who was the co-host of the show when Sir Lucian couldn't make it that one day. And he was the GM of this Dungeon Crawl Classics. And I guess going back to Numenera, like that system is so different, but I feel like it's, okay, where are my words? I feel like it's difficult to make a new dice rolling system, because we kind of already have this Dungeons and Dragons, you rolled a hit. Do I hit? Yes or no? There you go. Numenera did a really good job of that by having just the players roll for defensive rolls and things like that, but you're rolling a d20, like how can you reinvent the wheel? We were playing Dungeon Crawl Classics, which was basically like watered down D&D. And so it felt a lot more familiar to me. Like and that was another system that I'm like, I don't know anything about this system, but I know enough about Dungeons and Dragons that I'm like, oh, we're in combat now. Oh, we're doing this and this and this. But, somebody in chat says DCC is my favorite. And I'm starting to think it's part of my favorite too, because Dungeon Crawl Classics, you start at level 0 characters. So Lex said, make 4 characters and then be prepared that they're going to die. Which I thought was kind of morbid and interesting, that you're doing this survival of the fittest for these characters that you create. So we gave them all like funny names, and the character creation was completely random. Like you roll on tables to make all of these characters. And then you turn around and you see who survives, and it's really just luck. And I was really upset because by the very end, and you can watch this too, Lex put it up on his YouTube channel, or if you go to... I
watched it live. It was super fun.
Yeah. Thank you. Or if you go to my YouTube channel, there's a playlist called Live Games with Jordan, and it's in there. But I started out with 4 characters. I think I found another one, so I had about 5 characters. But it was down to the last 2, and we just defeated the super end boss, and then we had to run away, but the temple we were in was collapsing, and both of my guys rolled I think one rolled a 2 and the other rolled a 4 to avoid the debris of the collapsing temple, and they both died. So I didn't even make it out alive, which I was really upset about. But we got super attached to these characters, and I gave them stupid names like Keith and William, but the chat at the end was just like, Keith, no! And I'm like, oh my God. So
yeah, we were into it. That, to me, what makes that DCC super fun also was chat seemed really involved in that game, and I felt like the players were in chat at the same time, and it felt like a really fun game. I don't know how it would work with a long campaign, but what you guys did as a show where there's a couple of episodes or even a one shot. And a lot of people use that term, the funnel. That's where you always see this term that I hadn't seen in anything until I started looking at DCC stuff, was the funnel. And it's a classic dungeon delve game. And you're right, stripped down to be, hey, we're just dungeon delving. This is it. This is all we're doing. And it was fun. It was a funny game in a fun game, not taking itself too seriously. I think that's what made it really good.
I definitely wanted to keep playing. I had wished one of my characters survived so that we could then be like, okay, now they're level 1. And
what does that mean?
And what does that mean? Yeah, because I was really
Yeah.
curious. Like, you have to keep these stats that you have, but like when I'm level 1, what does that mean? And level 1 characters can start to choose classes, and you can pick abilities. And so I'm gonna have to read more about Dungeon Crawl Classics, because that could be those days that I can't actually play D&D. I might invite some friends over and say, roll some Dungeon Crawl Classic characters and let's just play through something. So
Yeah, that sounds super fun too. Yep.
because again, I'm not playing D&D this weekend because of the Oscars. My players want to watch the Oscars rather than play Dungeons and Dragons, which I'm like, you're crazy. You can like TiVo the Oscars. You're crazy.
Yeah.
But
I
so
can read
no
about
D&D
that.
this week, which is a little sad, but
And no Adventure League either, then, right? Or are you
Yeah,
gonna try
I-
Adventure League this week?
I'll probably try to go this upcoming week, but no, I didn't make it to Adventures League this week. Although I really want to. Like, I'm having a lot of fun. Oh, and I got recognized at Adventures League. So somebody was like, you remind me of a YouTuber. And I was just like, is his name Jordan with a PH? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. And so this guy was just like, I totally watch your videos. I'm like, that's awesome. So it was really cool.
Did he have you sign anything? Because that would have been the real.
Yeah, no. I'm not popular enough to have anything signed. And if anybody asked me to sign their like player's handbook or something, I'd be like, you're crazy. Here, like, I'll sign this piece of paper if you want, but like, I'm not going to tarnish your player's handbook with my handwriting.
Yeah.
But it was really fun. But I am enjoying Adventures League the more I go. I'm kind of getting like familiar with the players that are there. So it's not just like, oh, this is the weird new guy. Like, I now know these people and we've been playing games together. And that's what games do. Like, the more you play, the more you get that camaraderie and stuff with people, which is kind of fun. But I want to level up. Like, I'm playing a bard, I'm level 2, and I want to be level 3 so I can do my College of Swords and actually use like the abilities that I'm really excited about. But that would be fun, but boy, it's a slow process of leveling up in Adventures League. So, especially when you have like 8 people at a table, or not 8, but like 7 people at a table, you divide the experience points between everybody there. So, like,
Well, right. Slow if you go to one game a week, right? But you could
Yeah.
go to another game store or to a game store that has 3 or 4 of them in a week.
yeah,
And if you're like, hey, you're on your summer break or something, you're just hanging out, I bet you could get a character leveled pretty quick.
that's
if you
true. I wouldn't mind that. I should see, because I've got there's a town that's close to my town, and it's actually, I live on the border of it, so I kind of go to this other town's game store. But I should see about the other game stores and see if they play during the week, and then I could double dip in Adventures League, which would be kind of fun.
Yeah. And I think it's legal to play online too. So if you can find a Roll20 game that's playing Adventure League,
yeah.
that's just as legal as being sitting at the table. You can run an Adventures League game. So like I can run an Adventures League game. You can bring your character in, and that counts.
Yeah.
Even if it's with your friends. It doesn't have to just be with random people. It can be with your friends. It can be with people at a game store. It can be with people at conventions. It can be online. So it's really cool.
Yeah. No, it's fun. I am enjoying it more and more. It makes me want to play more characters. And Lucian and I were talking about this right before we started, where I was bored yesterday, and so I started making new characters. And I made a kobold rogue last night, and it makes me wonder if, I don't understand why more people haven't played a kobold rogue, or like why it's not like a broken class, because kobolds have pack tactics. So when you're next to somebody, you also get sneak attack, but you get pack tactics, which allows you to have advantage on the attack roll. So you can really like crit fish with a kobold rogue and try to get all of those awesome critical sneak attack damage.
Yeah, if you want to see it in action, Distracted Elf from the game The Blue Jay, who had mentioned your
okay.
channel, the other person in her party is playing a kobold rogue,
Okay.
and is doing the crit fishing.
Oh
stuff.
man,
Yeah.
it just seems so much fun, and I've never really wanted to play a rogue until I made that character, and I'm like, oh. And
I
Greybeard
think it's
points
funny
out.
too.
Go ahead.
Well, I think it's funny too that you had mentioned I was bored and I made a character, and last night I was bored and I made another campaign idea.
Oh.
So like I keep making more and more ideas about, oh, I want to do a campaign about this. And
Yeah.
like, oh no, I want to do a campaign about this.
No, whenever I make my Forgotten Realms Explained videos, I come away with a new campaign idea.
Yeah.
And there was one specifically, like, I think I was talking about oozes. I did a video on oozes and stuff. And then I'm like, what about like a sentient ooze that could shape change into creatures? And then I'm like, that just sounds like a great villain. And so I started like writing down like, no, and then the players could go here and they could go here. And I made this fun, well, about half done of a one shot based on like a sentient ooze monster that could shape change into like different people. So kind of like a doppelganger, but and worships Zagut-Moi, the Lord Demon Prince of oozes and things like that.
Yeah, well, like your
Juiblix.
last,
Sorry, somebody's gonna call me out on. I have to correct myself, otherwise I'm gonna get a whole bunch of YouTube comments. Juiblix, not Zagut-Moi.
Your last video this past week, which were the two gods again? It was Malar and
Mask. Malar and Mask.
And Malar was the one where you talked about possibly like having an evil druid, right?
Yeah.
The funny thing is, in my Borderlands campaign, that's a motif that is happening a little bit in that. And when you said Malar, I thought, oh, that fits in perfectly with this, because I kind of created that character without realizing what would the deity be that they would worship.
Right.
And then your video came right at the right time to say, oh, perfect, it now fits in, because I wanted to do an evil druid. I thought, what would an evil druid be like? What is the mindset of that person?
Yeah, exactly.
What are they doing, and how does the players come up against it? How does that all unfold? And I've got this really cool thing that's going now, and it's based on an evil druid, so it's pretty cool. So
oh man, cool. One of my 4th edition games had an evil druid in it named Rabat, and he would change into frogs and toads and stuff. And I was like, I thought I was so clever with that name when I finally wrote it. And then my party or my players all groaned at the table. They were like, really? And I'm like, well, I thought it was clever and funny. But he was an evil druid. And that's an interesting archetype, because there are not a lot of evil druids. Like, they want to preserve nature. So you're tapping into this magic in a destructive way, which is interesting. So
yeah,
yep,
very interesting. Well, I did notice you had one more note there you talked about, do you use miniatures or tokens in your online game? And I think that was spawned because you were talking about that game you played was a Theater of the Mind
Numenera game was entirely Theater of the Mind, and I'm realizing that I like miniatures. Like, I like being able to see the tactics of the board. And so I don't know, I wanted to talk to you about have you played Theater of the Mind? Do you prefer it? Do you like having your Roll20 game mat?
Yeah, I'm experimenting with both. In Roll20 even, I'm experimenting with always creating a map, putting everybody's tokens on and letting them move around. And I've also experimented with just putting a splash screen and then just saying, hey, this is what's going on, and explaining all of it.
Yeah.
And it's, what it reminds me of is our discussion when we talked about the idea of having a game every week versus having a game every couple of weeks. There's pluses and minuses to both, right? Mm-hmm. There's things I like about miniatures and tactical combat, but that slows combat down, right? Because everybody's being really careful about where they're moving. There's a lot of more decision-making going on. But if you're okay with that, and that's the game you want, then it's perfectly fine. Theater of the Mind is great about cinematic fights, or fights that you think about when you read a book or you watch a movie, whereas the ones that are on the mat and token moving, those don't normally work out to be like movie fights or Lord of the Rings kind of fights.
Right.
It just doesn't happen that way. It's more gritty, it's more real, it's more tactical. It's more like a street fight than it is a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon fight.
Now, do you think that's because everybody is picturing the fight in their brain, and when they don't have to do that, they let go of those, I don't know, like colorful words to describe their attacks? Or because I've had games where people have had very descriptive ways of how they're attacking and things like that. And I've also had combat where it's just like, all right, I'm going to move 10 feet and I'm going to attack him. So, but I strictly use miniatures on our game. Like my party loves it, so.
Yeah, I think it's good if you can keep it streamlined, and I like it a lot, because a lot of abilities rely on it, especially in Dungeons and Dragons, because you have things that are like 20-foot arcs or 30-foot cones or this kind of stuff. So you're really thinking in a grid anyways. But like in Numenera, a lot of that stuff, they don't have a grid.
Yeah,
right?
No.
So they just talk about something that's close, far, or, there's like 3 ranges that things can be in. And it's kind of arbitrary. It's kind of, wishy-washy. But in my Numenera game, we did use a map, we did use tokens, and we did move people around. And so it worked out just like a D&D game. If you put a map on there and tokens down, it feels just like that. There is a difference to how the game goes. But with Theater of the Mind, which is, you notice Critical Role has switched, right? Critical Role for the longest time in last season was mostly Theater of the Mind, with every now and then bringing out a set piece for fights. This year, every single episode, I think he's brought out a table to play on. They put their miniatures down, and they're a lot more tactical, moving around and doing stuff this year. So even Critical Role has looked at the idea of Theater of the Mind versus actual combat on a map, and they're experimenting too. I think what it is depends on what group you're with. It depends what you like. You're going to find the one that you like, and I think there's groups out there for both, and I think it has pluses and minuses for each one of them.
I bet Critical Role is doing that though because they've got the money now. Like, I wonder if that's what it is, because
I bet they don't even have to buy that.
Yeah, probably not. It's just like,
I bet
will you
Forge
sponsor
World
our
or
material?
whoever's building those is giving them all that stuff.
That's possible.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think
somebody in chat said you need to trust your GM. Graybeard said you need to trust your GM with Theater of the Mind. And it reminds me again, there are 2 GMs that I've played with at Adventures League, and one of them is strictly Theater of the Mind, and the other one is he has a battle grid. And I much prefer the battle grid, mostly because the Theater of the Mind guy, he's good at explaining things, but I think having 7 people at the table, it's hard to keep everything tracked in your brain. And I get very confused and lost. And there was a day where he was trying to describe, like, there's a pit here, and if you walk forward 10 feet, there's a door. And I flat out just told him, I'm like, I'm really sorry. I don't know anything. Like, can you show us a map or something? And so he did. He's like brought out the book. He kind of hid the pages where there would be spoilers, and gave us like a little brief glimpse at the map, which helped so much because I was just completely lost. So.
Yeah. So the drawback with Theater of the Mind is the GM that's doing it has to be very good at spatial awareness and has to be very good at communicating that to the people that are around the table and keep it all in mind, like you said. So I have done a couple of them in both of our campaigns. In Storm King's Thunder, I've done it in both ways. And it takes some time to be able to figure out when you've got 20 orcs that are moving all around and everybody's shooting arrows left and right and things are charging and you don't have a grid to keep that all on track, but you got to keep it in your head. But then also with a big map, one of the things I had trouble with a map was a map is great when they're not moving very much, but like on a running battle or a battle where the ranger wants to use their 400 feet of distance to shoot at something, we can't put a 400 foot squared out map on our table at all. And so if you get into a running battle or a chasing battle, you almost have to kind of go to Theater of the Mind because you don't, unless I guess you have a rolling map that you made on your table somehow, which would be kind of cool.
That is your $1 million idea, sir. You need to invent that and put miniatures on little wheels. So as you roll it, the terrain changes, but they stay in the center.
Yeah.
Magnets or something. That would be amazing.
But it definitely, to me, slows combat down some.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make that sound like that's a bad thing. If you like combat and you like to be that tactical, like if you go back to the days of playing BattleTech on the tabletop in the old school days, one turn took like 4 hours to get through, and everybody that was playing that loved it.
Yeah.
We would play one night, we'd play one round, we'd leave it all set up, come back the next week, play round number 2, because it took so long to do everything, but we loved it. So if you like that, it's great. But check your players. You never know what your table might like or might not like, as far as try them out, play around with them and see what you can do.
And maybe I just haven't had the right DM for this, but I feel like Dungeons and Dragons lends itself to having miniatures a lot better than, or it almost is a necessity in some cases. And it's not, because if you have the right DM, you can do Theater of the Mind. But in a system compared to Numenera, where you just said there's no like, oh, this is 10 feet away or 20 feet away. This is either close or near or far. I forget the phrases, but you just have words that describe that. So you can say like, oh no, you're close. And then I know that I can melee hit it. Or it's like, oh no, it's far. And then I know I can ranged hit it. or attempt to try and attack it through the range. So,
Yeah.
hey, Indoor Adventurer, for subscribing with Twitch Prime. That's awesome.
Nice. I'll be contacting you today. Good job.
Yeah,
so,
thank you.
Yeah, so I definitely wanted to talk to you about that because I saw that note and I thought, yeah, I've been experimenting to the point I don't know I can say one is better than the other. I don't think one is better than the other.
Do you prefer one or the other? Or
I'm
just
tactical. I'm
Okay.
super war game, miniature game, tactical guy. So I want to do that all the time. The only reason I'm leaning towards Theater of the Mind as a GM, though, is because it takes so much prep every single week to set the map up. And if you're going to run 2 or 3 games in a week, now that's 2 or 3 tactical maps you have to
that's
come up
true.
with every single week. And it starts to get quite a bit, So I wanted to do Theater of the Mind to ease up some prep at time so that I could then go back to big set pieces where we would have a map. And I think that's where I'm leaning towards this idea of some things can be Theater of the Mind to keep things moving, and I don't need to do a lot of prep. And then let's do the big battles with here's everybody's token, and let's see what happens.
Cool. Well, we're kind of coming up at the end of our show, I think. Are there any questions in the chat you guys want to ask us? And we can maybe answer some questions for the next 5 or 8 minutes.
Yeah, and while we're looking through there, it was Indoor Adventurer. Thanks for the subscription. This week, if you subscribe to the channel, I'm going to be contacting you to see if you want to play in a one-shot. It doesn't have to be on the channel. It can be offline, so you don't have to worry about having a camera or anything like that. But it's a Roll20 one-shot D&D 5th edition game, so I'll be seeing if you want to get in on that. And if anybody else wants to, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, and I'll be contacting you also.
Yeah.
Question-wise, it's a lot of good comments about this is how I do stuff and this is what I like, and that's all really good stuff. Like 20-Sided is putting a bunch of stuff out there. I see Cyberwolf is pretty active, and Indoor Adventure just joined. El Racy was here. El Racy, welcome. She is. I used to run a Ark Survival Evolved server, and we used to do a bunch of YouTube videos about Ark Survival Evolved, and she was from that, and she ran her own server. She's really, really cool person. Good to see she's in the channel. I'm looking for questions. I don't know. You seen anything we missed?
No, I just love 20 sides to every story. You were saying you love Theater of the Mind because when it's done correctly, you get a lot of back and forth between the players and the DM. And I was like, maybe that's just it. Like I'm not particularly good at running Theater of the Mind, so that's why I don't like it. / I haven't had that amazing DM yet that is describing the scene so well, Although Michael from Unmade Gaming, he did a really good job with our Numenera game, so maybe I'll learn some new stuff from him. So, yeah.
I see a question there. Favorite NPC you either made up as a DM or encountered as a player? It sounds like a question we've been asked before, but I think we both had an answer. We'll see if it's the same. What NPC in your game from your campaign is your favorite?
I think we've been asked this before, but the answer was I made this aquatic druid dwarf that was trying to mine the ocean floor. And that was his goal, was he wanted to figure out a way of mining the ocean floor. And he was a druid, so he could turn into octopuses and stuff, or octopuses.
Oh, nice.
And like swim down to the bottom and use all of his tentacles to try and like mine and stuff. So he hired my adventurers for that. So
that's cool. Yeah, mine
really
was we were in our game that you were playing with me, which was the McLancy Waddle one shot that turned into 3 or 4 sessions, which was really fun. But it was Sparrow, the young kid who wanted to be a bard and was following the party around. And I just enjoyed the idea of how the party had to try to deal with a super precocious, super energetic kid in our eyes, but in a medieval world, a 14-year-old is out adventuring. A 15-year-old is out trying to kill goblins or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's very different than what we think of it as in our world. So when I put that kid out there as he wants to be a bard, and he's, like that 12-year-old, and he follows you guys up the road, and then stuff happens. He gets kidnapped at the end, a cliffhanger at the end of the session. I was like, I just love that character of putting something that the players had to invest a lot of thought into. How do we deal with this? What do we do here? What's our moral standing? What's the right thing to do? That whole thing was really fun for me. So that was definitely my answer for that. So Sparrow, the young aspiring bard character, a 12-year-old in the game. That was a good one.
And 20 sides to every story. Thanks for the bits. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's very cool. Thank you very much. Least favorite rule as a DM or most problematic rule as a DM?
We need to get you the little like pop-up notifications or something. Or do you have those?
No, they're on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I guess I'm not watching on Twitch, so.
yeah, they're running.
That's super fun.
What rule do we hate? Didn't we just talk about a rule that we probably both disagreed on, I thought?
A rule that we hate? I don't think so. I'm trying to think of something.
No, we disagreed on prep time. Or no,
improvising.
Improv. That's what it was. That's what it was. But you're the theater guy, so you're like, yeah. You should just improv all the time.
The grapple always, I guess grapple is something rules that frustrates me because I always have to like look it up. And my players always seem to think it either does more or less than it actually does. And when monsters grapple, they're always like, well, can I attack if I'm grappled? Because you think the idea like your arms are all tied up and you're grappled. So off the top of my head, that's something that frustrates me, but I don't necessarily hate it. So
yeah, I like the older rules of grappling, though they were more complicated. They covered more situations and they did exactly what you just said, met the expectations of what the player is trying to do. Because the player's mind is, I'm wrapping them up like an MMA fighter type thing. But the rules are, I'm grabbing your cloak and you can't run away from me. And that's as far as your grapple has gone. Yeah. We both can flail at each other. We both can do stuff. I'm just making it so you can't run away is all that's happened.
But I think with that same grapple check, you can move them. Like
you can
move them around. Oh, is it a strength check to see if you can make it?
Yeah.
Because then you could also move them prone, I believe.
Right.
And so, and then their speed is 0, so they can't get back up if they're like grappled prone. And you can do all this extra, have advantage against them and things like that. So
I think the rules definitely could be more concise. I actually, the rule that I wish that was a little bit better was mounted combat. We get it a lot in the campaign I'm running now. And I just watched, they just talked about mounted combat rules this last week in D&D, and it felt more clarified, but it still doesn't feel like it's the impact of a person on a horse charging down their target, hitting them with their weapon on a full run. And those mechanics just aren't quite there, but I realize why they do it. You can't make, simulation style rules for everything that's out there. You want the game to be streamlined. You want it to work for all campaigns, but I wish mounted combat rules were a little bit stronger.
Yeah.
I think a little bit more willing to do them, and then people would want to do them more. All right, so there's lots of good questions, but I think we're getting close to the end of our show.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jordan?
No, I think we're good. Thank you guys so much for coming out and watching us. Also, thanks to Ella Racy for subscribing with her Twitch or his Twitch Prime, his or her Twitch Prime. Sorry.
Yeah,
but that's awesome. Thank you guys. It's really cool to support Lucian's channel and support the Saturday Morning D&D show in general. So it's awesome. I just want to say thanks again for coming out for our humble little channel. It's really awesome that you guys are here, despite not having a Matt Colville.
Hopefully we were half as entertaining. A quarter as entertaining as him.
And again, if you want to catch us, you can always catch us live here because I saw some people show up a little later. We're live at 12 p.m. Eastern every Saturday morning. And you can catch the VOD on my channel on YouTube on every Monday morning. So I'll release it there. Any final thoughts you have, Mr. Lucian?
No, I can't wait for this week to get back into more Dungeons & Dragons and game playing. Lots more stuff coming up on the channel. And I'm super happy everybody joined today and all the support that we got. It's super glad to be able to do it. We're humbled, and I can't wait to keep doing this. I love the Saturday morning show.
Cool. Well, thanks again, guys. We will see you next week with more exciting stuff about the Saturday Morning D&D show. Maybe some more special guest hosts. Not guest hosts, but special guests. So we're in the works with talking with some people to have them as guests again on the channel. So that should be a lot of fun. And until then, have a great week, and we'll see you next weekend. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
See ya.